Hello and welcome to the monthly lookie into Russian affairs. At the beginning of the war in Ukraine, there was a lot of noise in the media sphere, at least, about the demise of the Russian economy, and even suggestions that the wilderness of the 90s will return to Russia. But none of that happened. And in good part, that is due to the work of the Central Bank of Russia, and one woman in particular, Elvira Nabiullina. So, who is Elvira Nabiullina? She was born in a Tatar family in 1963. She studied at Moscow State University, where she met Professor Yasin, who later became Minister of Economics, and took his star pupil with him. In 2006, Putin put her in charge of preparing for the Russian presidency of the G8. From May 2008 to May 2012, she was the Minister for Economic Development, and she concentrated on optimizing the financing of state corporations and their restructuring. So that made her very few friends, as you can imagine. In 2013, Putin appointed her head of the Central Bank of Russia. The first thing that Nabiullina did was clean up the banking sector. In her first 4 years, more than 300 banks lost their licenses. Her goal was to reduce the risk posed to the economy by banks involved in shady or unscrupulous businesses, or banks that were undercapitalized, as well as to protect investors from the risks of placing their funds in weak banks. The central bank in Russia is responsible for monetary policy, bank regulation and supervision, non-bank financial sector supervision, and is the de facto Securities Commission as well. In Nabiullina's view, this mega regulator approach suits the Russian financial sector, as it enables the central bank to look at all the products and activities of a company or a group when evaluating its viability. In 2013-2014, she pushed for a floating exchange rate and refocused the efforts of the Central Bank of Russia on controlling inflation. Nabiullina believes that keeping inflation under control is the cornerstone of a stable economy. Primary tool used by central banks everywhere to control inflation is the key rate or base rate. And of course, when the central bank key rate or base rate goes up, there are casualties because the cost of borrowing goes up as well. So even if Nabiullina seems to be in principle against it, there are compromises that had to be made. For example, at the beginning of the war in Ukraine, when the key rate had to go up to control inflationary pressure, other measures were implemented to soften the blow. Examples are a bank holiday for mortgage repayments, financial help for young families with children, and various subsidies for small and medium-sized companies. Notably, under her guidance, the central bank developed an alternative to the SWIFT system, the International Financial Transactions Messaging System. This quote gives us an insight on how Nabiullina thinks, and it's part of an interview she gave in December 2023. At the bank, we are working for the public good, for long-range goals. We need to deliver on our promises to society. That is a key principle for me and for our staff. Interestingly, Politico has had a go at her in this article, links below. It seems to me for just being annoyingly good at her job. How good, you may ask? Well, she was the first woman to run a central bank of a G8 country. In 2015, she received the Euromoney magazine award as the best leader of a central bank in the world. In 2017, the British magazine The Banker chose Nabiullina as the Central Banker of the Year in Europe. In 2021, Forbes ranked her as the 60th most influential woman in the world. And roll forward to now, and against the wide-ranging sanctions, Russia's GDP is estimated to grow 2.6% according to the IMF. And according to the Central Bank of Russia, they believe they are on track to bring back the inflation to 4.5% later this year. Currently, Mrs. Nabiullina is in hospital. And there are plenty of rumors about the nature of her illness on social media, but so far neither the Kremlin or the central bank has issued a formal statement, apart from Peskov, the Kremlin spokesman, wishing her a quick recovery. To conclude, Elvira Nabiullina is the numbers person. The Kremlin makes the policies, she makes sure that there is money to carry them out. But this is election year, and as Mr. Putin has declared his intention to run for another term, he will want good numbers as well as economic-friendly packages for the electorate. And as Mr. Putin is definitely running, let's look at how he's doing in the opinion polls. Well, Mr. Putin's approval ratings have gone up a few notches. And with regards to how the country is run, most respondents still feel that the government is steering the country in the right direction. But there have been a couple of protests. One in the Republic of Bashkortostan. The protesters demanded that a local activist, Fail Alzinov, to be freed and for the local governor to be dismissed. Their grievances focus on corruption in public office. And there was a small protest in Moscow led by wives and mothers of servicemen who want their loved ones to come back home. On this side of the fence, any protests in Russia attract the attention of the media. And to be honest with you, I got in the habit of estimating the likely size, importance or impact of such protests by looking at the images. If the images of protesters are shot from high up looking down, that's a very well attended protest. A lot of people turned up. But as the angle changes, chances are the number of protesters are going down as well. For example, if most images of a protest are taken at eye level, well, not very many people turned up. And if most of the images you see are taken from a low angle looking up, i.e. the camera is low and looking up at the protesters, that means that very, very few people attended. The low camera looking up angle is very popular when you need to fill in the frame fundamentally. But it is an election year, and in an election year there is always a chance for unrest to flare up, as nearly everybody ends up having to think about politics and politicians a bit more than usual. The election of the President of Russia will be held on the 15th to 17th of March this year, and so far the registered candidates are Mr. Putin, the current incumbent, Nikolai Karatinov, Leonid Slutsky, and Vladislav Davankov. The candidates from parties that are not represented in the Duma have to submit 100,000 signatures before they can be registered as presidential candidates. So far, two of these have submitted the 100,000 signatures, and these two are Sergei Malinkovich and Boris Nadezhdin. Currently, the Central Commission election is going through the signatures, checking for irregularities. I have listed, as always, all my sources in the description below. Among those, there is a really quite refreshing interview conducted by Medusa with Nadezhdin. It's worth a read. Please see below for links. And that's it for this month. Thank you so much for watching. My next video will be the last chapter of the spy and detective novel I'm writing, The Gordian Knot. I hope you see you there. And if you have enjoyed, please like and subscribe. It does help me a lot, but more importantly, have a lovely day. Bye-bye.